Hi, guys. Today I want to talk to you about what to talk about when you are writing about a book. Specifically for your book review, we've told you that you need to be talking about specific elements of the book in detail, just like you saw in your mentor texts. But we wanted to make it a little bit extra easy for you to figure out what those elements might be. So that's what this lesson's going to do for you. So, we talked in a previous video about how you can't just write a summary of the book and slap your opinion on the end of it. So, if that's the case, if you can't just write a summary, then what can you write about? So, one thing you could write about is the plot. In fact, you probably need to give a brief synopsis of what the text is about in general. Notice here in this review from The Rest of Us Just Live Here, which is one of your mentor texts, the synopsis is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences, one short paragraph. It says The Rest of Us follows a few normal high schoolers who aren't in charge of averting the upcoming apocalypse. They're more like the dazed, baffled bystanders Buffy saves when Sunnydale's mayor becomes a giant snake, or the ordinary teenagers watching from the corners of the school cafeteria as the Cullens play out their mopey vampiric soap operas. Nessa's protagonists know something major and magical is going on. They just have their own problems to deal with. This is the synopsis of what's going on. It's really brief, it's really to the point, but it gives us a general sense of what has happened in this book or what is happening in this book in case we haven't read it yet and are trying to decide if this is going to be a book for us. However, the other side of it, of talking about the plot, is whether or not it's a good plot. Here is a little bit from the review of Twilight. And this says, the plot may sound rather comic and camp, but Meyer chooses to play it straight and serious. She talks about, the plot may sound kind of corny, but actually it's not that corny and it has really serious consequences and it becomes more and more disturbing the longer you read it. So here the writer has said, here's what the book is about, and here's what I think about that. Here's where I think, do the plot points make work? Or do the plot points make sense? Do they work together? Is this a story that is corny? Or is this a story that is moving? Or is this a story that is serious? Or is this a story that's disturbing? Another thing that you might talk about is the genre of the books. That's what kind of book is it? What category does it fit in? You should come back here and read this. This is a beautiful, smart paragraph. But it talks about how it's nearly a flippant YA or young adult satire, but actually it does fit into the current contemporary realistic YA trend that John Green helped kick off. Telling readers what genre they're looking at. Is this historical fiction? Is it realistic fiction? Is it nonfiction? Is it young adult? Is it romantic? Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy? Is it a sports book? All of those things help us place a book into categories in our brain and better help the reader know whether or not this is a book they want to try. Here's another one that talks about enthusiasm being escapist fantasy. That's the genre it puts enthusiasm into. Obviously, you're probably going to want to talk in your book review about characters. This is a paragraph describing Bo, who is the protagonist in Twilight Life and Death. So you can read this, but it gives, a little bit about, like, generally, here's what this character likes, here's what they dislike, here's their traits, here's what they do in the book. You probably definitely want to talk about themes somewhere because that is going to really summarize the book for someone. In this review of I'll Give You the Sun by Janie Nelson, she says, art, its creation, its importance, its impact on identity and freedom is perhaps the central theme of I'll Give You the Sun. The book celebrates art's capacity to heal, but it also shows us how we excavate meaning from the art we cherish and how we find reflections of ourselves within it. So giving a brief paragraph, a brief mention about the theme of the book is also something that book reviewers do frequently. You might think about the writing style and whether this is a writing style that works or doesn't work. Let's go back there. Here she says, on a line by line level, Nelson is bold, even breathtaking. You get the sense of her characters are bursting through her words, breaking free of the normal metaphors and constructions, jubilantly trying to rise up from the prison of language. This one is less raving about Twilight, no surprise there. But it says the book suffers at times from over earnest, amateurish writing. A little bit more showing and a lot less telling might have been a good thing. So you could think about, how does the writer, in this case, how does J.D. Salinger write? What is his style? How could you describe that style, and how does that affect your reading of the book and how much you enjoy it? How effective or satisfying you find the ending. You see here one about I'll Give You the Sun, and the writer says, my only problem with the book is how fast the ending was and how quickly all the loose ends were tied up. You might think about comparisons to other texts. You saw that actually in the first little blurb, the synopsis of The Rest of Us Just Live Here. But here he compares The Rest of Us Just Live Here to a lot of other books or book series. That really helps your reader, again, put this book in a category and say, like, oh, well, I did like the Thursday Next series, so I'd probably like this one if it's similar. You might think about how the book works in our society or in our culture. In this review of Polly Schulman's book Enthusiasm, the writer begins by talking about how young adult problem novels are full of alcohol, drugs, date rape, obscenities, and piercings. So it really thinks about other books that are happening right now and how this book fits in. And then at the end of the review, the writer goes back and kind of compares it to real life again. She says, both Enthusiasm and Twilight made me think back to those ridiculously painful moments in adolescence when one is a helpless victim to romantic infatuation or worse, obsession. So thinking about how does this ring true? How does this ring true in our society today or in our culture? Now, what are some elements you might discuss? None of your mentor texts talked about these, but these are things that book reviewers do routinely talk about. Setting. If the setting is a really important part of the book, you might think about describing that setting and talking about why it's important, how it works or how it doesn't. You might also consider talking about the tone of the book. What is the author's attitude or the narrator's attitude in the book? Is this a happy book? Is it a funny book? Is it a sad book? Is it a melancholy book? Is it an angry book? Is it a tense book? What is the tone and how do you know? You also might think about the narration. This is particularly important for The Catcher in the Rye because we have a first-person narrator. Everything that we read in the book, we get through Holden's perspective. So for you, that might really be worth mentioning as an important facet of Holden's personality or of the style of the book. In other books, if it's like a third-person narrator, it might be less important to mention. But if this is something that sticks out to you, then it's something that you might want to think about. So those are some items that you might talk about if you're talking about a book. I would really encourage you to go back and just go through these slides one by one to read the examples from the mentor texts. I went through it really quickly to save you time now. But if you are writing about the plot synopsis, go back and look at that mentor text for the plot synopsis. You'll probably get some really good ideas. You might even get some sentence starters, and it will be a guide for you as you write about each of these elements. When you write about character, go back and look at these places where it talks about character, etc. As always, please raise your hand. Come by Discovery Tutorial Conference with your teacher if you're having trouble. If you aren't sure what elements to talk about in your book review, but I would really recommend kind of starting here. Go back to your flash draft. See what elements you've already talked about on your own, and then go through this PowerPoint again and look at the list of elements and think, okay, what else can I add? And that way, when you have all of the elements planned out, you can go back and write and flesh those out a little bit more. Good luck.